Yeah. All right, what do we got here? Lots of sketchy users, good number of blueprint users. Fourth years, what are you doing in here?
Yeah, rank lists are in, right?
Shouldn't, yeah,
Are they
shouldn't you be on a
soon?
beach or
Soonish?
something?
Yeah.
If you're gonna chat with us, which would be awesome, uh, just change your two to everyone from hosts and panelists.
Yes.
If you're gonna chat with us, which would be awesome.
Did I just chat to just
You chatted
ourselves?
just to yourself, basically,
Yeah,
which is that's
sure.
actually in the psych section, Chris. We're not talking about that today.
Hello again.
Are we all the voices of the different sections of Sketchy? Uh,
We are a couple,
so yeah, we are some of the
right? Yeah,
voices. Yeah, I forgot to do my vocal warm-ups though.
I know we do.
Yes, we love her
Psych
too. That is
noted.
Ricky. Ricky does the voice for Sketchy
Yeah,
Pat. She is not here, sadly, but we also love her. She is the best.
today's her work anniversary.
That's right. Today is her
Little
sketchy versary.
Ricky trivia that
Yeah.
perhaps nobody was expecting.
If you're here in the chat and you put other for what you are, I'd be curious to know some of what that means.
Say more. Okay, Jen, you're just saying. Let's go.
Yeah. But in the meanwhile, we can
Yeah.
we can get started. I think. IMG from
Okay.
Germany.
Well, hi
Okay.
everybody. Welcome to the Sketchy and Blueprint Master Immunology for Step 1 webinar. So before we get into Sketchy and Blueprint and our immunology product, we're going to introduce ourselves. So my name's Chrissy. I'm an associate creative director here at Sketchy. I went to med school at USC, did part of my OBGYN residency at UCLA, and then realized that I like cartoons more. But I, yeah, joined Sketchy 4 years ago and have been here ever since and used it as a med student too and like really loved it as a med student. And that is a picture of my cat in that other picture too.
I'll go next. I'm Ben. I'm the creative director here. Went to med school at Columbia and graduated in 2018. And then just if no matter how deep you go in our bios, Chrissy and I just say the same thing. So did the other pelvic surgical specialty also at UCLA. Also realized that my destiny was to make cartoons for y'all and just following in her footsteps.
Awesome. I'm Anna. I'm a Blueprint USMLE tutor. I did my undergrad at a tiny school in Missouri called Drury, and then did medical school at my state school at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Go Roos. And then lastly, I'm a current internal medicine resident. I'm a third year at the University of Michigan.
Awesome. Well, feel
So
free to introduce yourself in the chat. So in terms of what we're going to go over today, we're just going to go over what is Sketchy and Blueprint, if you don't already know. We're going to go over our immunology course, which is still relatively new. It was launched last year. Then we'll do a full lesson walkthrough of the complement cascade, everybody's favorite, the common pathway specifically. And then we'll do some questions and then the big giveaway at the end. So I'll hand it over to Ben to tell you guys what is Sketchy.
what is Sketchy? Yeah, so it looks like actually a lot of you have used Sketchy already, so you sort of know what this is, and you probably are familiar with this picture, but we take all the hard stuff that you need to know in med school and we turn it into pictures and stories that help it stick forever and make it really easy to recall when you need it, whether that's on a test or when you're getting pimped in the hospital or any sort of stressful time like that. And our goal is to first and foremost make the teaching really good and the information easy to remember, but then also so that to make sure you have a little bit of fun while you're studying to the extent that that is possible. So the sort of tripartite foundation of Sketchy is learning, understanding, and recall. So like I said, we really want to make sure that you learn this material in a way that is clear and effective. I don't know about y'all, but certainly my lectures in med school were not always the most clear or the most tailored toward exactly where I was in my sort of learning journey, as it were. So we want to make sure that we hit that, and then sort of corresponding with that, that you understand what's going on, both that you understand the specific concept and also where it falls in the greater context of medicine. And then I think the real secret sauce, our real sweet spot, is helping you remember this stuff. And I think, you know, we have a derm resident in the chat. I think she will attest to the idea that this stuff really sort of lasts forever. I still remember, I mean, I see them all the time, but I remember sketches from when I was studying for step long, long ago. So it really is very impressively effective, and sometimes, unfortunately so, there's stuff you can't forget, for which we're terribly sorry. One way that we help you remember all that stuff, and even if you've used Sketchy before, you might not actually know that this is exactly how this works. So one sort of technique that we effectively use at Sketchy is this thing called the method of loci, or you may have heard the term memory palace. And so the idea here is that hand waving a little bit over thousands of years of evolution, your brain has evolved to remember physical spaces really well. So that before there were maps or writing, people and precursors of people still knew where their homes were and where safe spaces were and where food was and all of that. And you do this today all the time, maybe without even thinking about it. So if you think about your grocery store or your childhood home or some sort of familiar space like that, I'm sure that you can walk around it in your mind. I mean, literally, like, think about going in the front door of the grocery store and you know where the produce is and where the coffee is and where the dairy section is. And for me, where the ice cream aisle is. And you didn't set out to do that. You know, you didn't sit down one day and say, hey, I'm going to memorize my Whole Foods. It just happened because your brain is good at that. And so essentially we hijack that talent and put medical information and funny symbols on top of it. But so that if you've used Sketchy before, I'm sure you've had that experience of seeing a word or something on a test that made you think of a sketch, and then your mind moved around the sort of, you know, 3D-ish space of that sketch to find the answer to the question. And that method is extremely powerful. So this is a graph of what's called the forgetting curve. And the idea is you learn something and then you start to forget it. And the more you review, the easier it is to subsequently retain that information, as long as you do it in a relatively reasonable time frame. And so essentially Sketchy both shortcuts that forgetting curve. So we get you up a little higher and flatten the slope downward so that you forget it more slowly. And we have built-in review tools that help you quickly and easily review the information to really solidify it in your mind. There are a lot of second years on here. I do see some third years and some first years and 8 fourth years who, again, go to the beach. You know, our goal here is to cover everything in med school, and you know, we're not quite there yet, especially on the clinical side, although stay tuned on that. But we really do have a pretty comprehensive program. So from your first year with, and again, this is a little bit different everywhere, but with biochem and immuno and anatomy, the second year with micro and pharm and path, and then for your rotations and your sub-Is and beyond clinical topics, you know, we've got you covered. these, there are big numbers here. None of this is anything you need to get through in like a terribly short amount of time, given the breadth from preclinical to clinical. But we do really have a lot of stuff, including a ton of questions, which I always found very helpful when I was studying. I wish Sketchy had questions back in my day. And then just a note, hopefully I've emphasized this enough that we really take the teaching and the content very seriously here. So Chrissy and I are both doctors. We work with subject matter experts across all the fields that we're covering. We have other doctors on staff here. We use all the sources. So, we use the resources that you're used to, like first aid and up to date, and we use those to help sort of guide our scope. But we also get into journal articles when we need to. Chrissy and I have spent many a day deep in the weeds trying to figure out something precisely, so that even though that particular narrow concept isn't that important to know for step one, we want to make sure that when we're sort of backing off a step, we're still getting the details right. And then we're constantly going back and looking at our material and making sure that it's correct and updated. I think sort of the most notable example of this is that before 2020, our at the time coronavirus lesson was 2 minutes long, and now it's a little longer. So, things change in medicine all the time. We try and go back and update them, as they become high yield for tests. So hopefully this has been a compelling pitch for why you should use Sketchy. It's super effective, both for learning and for remembering. Have time for friends, hobbies, and physical activities. If you're in med school, you have no idea what those are, so don't worry about that. Have fun studying. Genuinely, we try and keep it fun. We don't want this to be like you're watching stand-up on Netflix, but we do want you to not feel totally miserable while you're watching this. And you can use it for the entirety of med school and do well using it. So, with meaningful usage, which I forget the exact definition of, people do pretty dang well on step 2 Sketchy, and step 1 back when there were numbers for that.
Back in our day.
Back in the old day.
And now we're gonna hand it over to Anna for a bit to go over Blueprint.
Awesome. Wow, this is just so nostalgic, hearing what you guys have to say about Sketchy. Thinking back, it certainly kind of saved me during my medical school career and studying for the USMLE exams. So just wow. So Blueprint is a different resource than Sketchy. It's pretty awesome. It has 3 key features. The first, it comes with a free med school study planner. And this is great for kind of all types of students. If you're a student that likes to have every minute of every day kind of organized and planned, it can do that. If you're the type of student that just really wants a skeleton of what you need to get done that day, it can do that as well. It's intuitive, it's easy to use, and probably the best aspect of it is that you can use resources like Sketchy and UWorld and plug it into the calendar, and it will break it down. For example, how many Sketchy videos I need to do per day to get done by this week. So it can really help tailor your Sketchy studying schedule. The next, probably the pillar of Blueprint Med is our tutors. I am biased because I am one of them, but it's really a team of physicians that are tutors. And we've all been in your shoes. I think that's the best part of it, is that we can really tailor your experience. We can meet you at your level. We're your biggest cheerleaders, but we can kind of be that push that you might need to get in gear and achieve the goal that you're looking for. We have extremely high pass rates and scores with that. And then the last resource that kind of comes with the Blueprint Med bundle is the STEP question bank, which is awesome. It's over 5,000 questions. You can use it for your individual class exams, whether that's histology or pathology, but you can also use it for the USMLE exams and the shelf exams, which is super helpful. And it has great kind of explanations, which other question banks I feel like might lack. Blueprint really focused on making sure that the explanation was clear and concise. And then coming up, we are going to be releasing soon a USMLE Step 1 practice exam, which is super exciting. I know there's a bunch of other kind of brands out there that have the USMLE step exams, but again, UWorld or Blueprint really tried to focus on making it very similar to the real deal. So exciting.
Like more Cuban, more practice tests as always.
Yeah.
I was always on the hunt for those.
Yeah, I wish this had existed when I was but a youngster.
Now,
Back in our youth.
back when UWorld was like 800 questions total. Now it's like, I think.
Yeah, back when you could reasonably go through it twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end, everyone stay tuned because Blueprint will be giving away 2 free hours of tutoring.
Yeah, which is huge. Okay, so now we're going to go over immunology. And our immuno course, like I said earlier, is relatively new. It came out last year. And I think part of what's been so cool about working at Sketchy is the dialogue with med students. And we basically asked med students, like, what would you guys like for us to develop next? And immuno was like way up there. And I think, having been in med school ourselves, we knew the gauntlet that immunology could be. Because, immunology can be like the most fine print, intricate, like decades and decades of research, molecular level kind of textbook amount of information, or there's kind of the stuff that you need to know that's clinically relevant. And it's really hard to strike a balance between those two. And so what we've tried to do in our course is in 23 lessons over 4 units and 11 chapters, we've tried to give you not just a good foundation in immunology, but something that you can come back to at any point during your med school career as, you learn it as in the preclinical years, maybe as when you're in MS1 or MS2, and then you have to come back to it. Maybe you're doing immunosubi or something like that later on. And it's something that obviously just never will go away. And it's really hard to relearn. I know that personally from just like going back through my notes and being like, oh my God, I don't remember what these maps I drew on. So I can't believe I knew this. And so what we're hoping to provide with this product is really having that home base that you guys can always come back to when referring to immunology. So this is, like I said, there are 4 units. So we have components to the immune system, the innate immune system. The adaptive immune system is on the next page because it's so much bigger. And then autoimmune diseases. So this is the adaptive. Because I know like thinking about, oh wait, how are B cells activated again? Like that, and they mature, and coming back to all of that and really having a lesson that you reviewed in the past with images that you've also learned, I think is really, people have found to be very helpful. So as an example, before we go into the actual lesson that we're going to do step by step, I just wanted to show you that another feature of our immunology course is that every sketch is set in the same world because there are so many recurring and interacting components of the immune system. We wanted to make sure that all of these sketches interacted with each other so that, when you saw a helper 4 squire, that was a helper T cell. And kind of just as an example here of how we break things down symbol wise, like this table on the left here that's built in and always in place is the innate immune system because it's built in and always in place. And then this table that has to get set up over here, this will represent the adaptive immune system. And those are just a few examples of how we symbolize things in this medieval immunoverse. And over here on the left, I don't know if you can see, but there are some high-fiving shadows, which will lead us straight into our next sketch.
Yeah.
And yes, the macro cages. They're there.
Yeah, macro cages. Actually, I think that's a cool illustration of, I think, one other thing that I didn't mention that's super powerful about Sketchy. Also a cool illustration. we use recurring symbols. So when we talk about macrophages, we'll bring in those macrophages every time. And so you start to get a sense for what the lesson is going to talk about and where it's going to go before you even watch it. And I bet there are folks on the chat who could tell us sort of a lot what these symbols are, even if they haven't watched any Sketchy Immuno yet. If you've only watched Micro or Farm or something, we reuse those symbols across all of our courses to keep things consistent and help you just remember that much better. The complement cascade. Yeah, I remember learning that. I shouldn't even say learning this. I remember being supposed to learn this in med school, and it was just a nightmare. So yeah, hopefully we make this a little more fun. So like Chrissy said, our whole immuno course takes place in this medieval setting, but we try and mix up the scenes and scenarios to keep things interesting and help make our sketches a little bit distinct so that we don't all blend together. So this one takes place down in the crypts, and Chrissy foreshadowed quite literally the see what I did there? The complement high five. So, any good crypt has a couple of statues in it. And those ones in the back there are high-fiving because we're talking about complement in this lesson. And so complement has kind of three main functions. The first is to make what's called the membrane attack complex, or the MAC, which essentially attacks and lyses microbial cells. Membrane attack, it makes holes in the membranes. And so we've got our MAC, the private eye here. That's another sort of deep cut recurring symbol. But for the purposes of this sketch, they're sort of an investigative seer because they're fitting in this medieval world. And they represent that idea of the membrane attack complex, the MAC. Oh yeah, sorry. So then the second function is to do what's called opsonization, which is essentially just tagging bad things so that other parts of your immune system can deal with them. So complement tags microbial cells, and then depending on the particular situation, antibodies or other phagocytic cells take care of those microbes. So back there in our sort of, again, crypt area, we've got some different tagged items, sort of almost like evidence tags in this private eyes lockers to represent that idea of opsonization or tagging. And then third, you'll see on the door there that we should have like little arrows or something. Anyway, you'll see on the door there that Mac is recruiting some sort of assistant or deputy. And that is symbolic of the third piece, third function of complement, which is recruitment. So in addition to destroying microbes itself and tagging it for other cells to deal with, complement also does the step of bringing the other cells to the party. So it does what's called chemotaxis, or helps recruit immune cells to the relevant area to deal with the invaders. There are a bunch of footsteps coming into Mac's office, and they're coming from sort of three different directions from outside, and they converge through the door into one path. And so this is representative of the idea that there are actually three different activation pathways for complement that ultimately converge onto one pathway, which is called the common pathway. And so in this lesson, we just stick with sort of the common pathway, but the lesson after this covers those sort of three initial activation pathways and how they're each a little bit different and sort of suited for their task. And then we added over on Mac's desk her lunch, which is sausage, a salami, something like that. That is sort of broadly representative of protein. And the machete is a sort of a recurring symbol for something that cleaves proteins. So in this case, enzymes called convertases cleave proteins as you go down the cascade, and that's sort of what keeps it going. If you know the coagulation cascade, which is equally painful perhaps, it's sort of a similar idea that you keep having these new constructs that form and cleave the next thing down the path. So again, that machete cutting the sausage is just symbolic of the idea of cleaving proteins, and we'll talk more specifically about what exactly happens with that. In fact, Chrissy will talk about that.
Yes, now it's time for the infamous common pathway complement cascade. And before we go into it, I just kind of wanted to say that when writing this lesson, we put a lot of thought into, what information are we going to try to symbolize and convey so that these are the points that people and students like yourselves can really remember. Because the complement cascade, kind of like all of immunology, can be as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. And everything has like 5 names, and different groupings have 5 different names, and it can get very, very confusing. But what we've tried to do with this sketch is really just do kind of the greatest hits of the common pathway and steps that where they converge is like really essential and really hits at those 3 main functions that Ben was talking about at the beginning. So it may look a little different than maybe what you've seen in the past, but it is A, accurate, and B, really a distillation of trying to show you how complement achieves those 3 functions, which are the membrane attack complex, opsonization, and recruitment of other immune cells. So the first step of the common pathway, that all those 3, basically where the 3 footsteps all converge, is where C3 gets converted to C3A and C3B. So C3 is our 3-seeing crow or 3-eyed crow. And so that's why he's right there by the door. And C3 gets cleaved into C3A and C3B. And so C3A, we've represented with these A jewels, and then C3B is our 3-seeing crow with B-shaped glasses. And again, the way that cleaving happens is covered in the next video, but this is just the first step where all 3 pathways converge into the common pathway. So C3B works to help complement achieve its intended functions by optimizing bacteria. So we have this 3-seeing crow with the B-shaped glasses coming up here to those evidence lockers and picking up one of the tagged objects. This is where things start getting confusing sometimes, but we think this sketch will definitely help with that. 3CB can also combine with other proteins and become something called C5 convertase. That's a zoom in of our friend C5 convertase. So it's the 3-seeing crow, 3CB with the B-shaped glasses, and a little 5 bandana. And you might have guessed from the word convertase that this cleaves a protein. And so C5 convertase cleaves C5 into C5A, which is now this piece down here, kind of on the ground, and then C5B, and then C6 through 9. And if you remember all of that alphabet soup correctly, or from the past, you'll know that that is MAC. MAC is C5B and C6 through 9. And so we've tried to help you remember this by having this open sign that was once open from 5 and then 6 to 9, and then gets cleaved by our C5 convertase crow. And this part that remains, the 5B and then 6 to 9, the latter half, is above MAC to show you that this is MAC. And then the 5A part gets thrown off, and we'll show you why in a little bit. Oops. And we'll show you why on the slide. And so C5A, and as you can see, C3A, these are chemoattractants, and that's why we have our macrocage guy, actually macrocage explorer, reaching, and he's next to both of them. And that was one of the functions of complement that we went over earlier as well, is it acts as a chemoattractant. And then MAC is conjuring up a portal because that's what the membrane attack complex does. It opens up like a giant pore, basically, in the side cells. It attacks the membrane. And so that's basically the common pathway. And again, a pretty simplified version, but I think it really, really drives home the most important parts of the complement cascade and kind of why we care about each part and what it helps the immune system do. So now I will hand it back over to Anna to go over some of the questions about this lesson.
Yeah, awesome. Wow, I wish I had that sketch during my medical school journey because I remember the alphabet soup of the complement cascade like it was yesterday. Okay, so because there are, close to 200 of you guys on this call, when we go over these questions, I won't be calling anyone out, so no one needs to get stressed. But let's just kind of quickly use what we just learned and referencing the images in our head to see if we can kind of come to the answer, the correct answer. So question 1 says, during an infection, a patient's immune system activates the complement pathway, resulting in cleavage of C3 into C3A and C3B. What is the primary role of C3b in this process? So thinking back, I remember the crow, the three-eyed crow gets cleaved into C3a and C3b. And then, sorry, I'm gonna move my screen here a little bit. But so one blueprint technique I always have all of my students do is I feel like with Sketchy, it's really easy to immediately be drawn to the correct answer because you're like, I remember the picture in my head, easy, done, move on. But I always encourage as a tutor to exclude the other answer options. So when we're thinking about answer option A, which is acting as a chemoattractant for the macrophages, thinking back to what activates the macrophages, that was the C5a. So it's probably not A. Answer choice B is binding to bacteria for opsonization, which thinking back, we remember the crow, Ben mentioned, or Chrissy mentioned the tagging. And I think that if I had to put my nickel down, that will probably be the right answer. Answer choice C is forming pores in the bacterial surface, causing a lysis. That was kind of at the end of the sketch. Didn't directly, it certainly involves the C3 protein, but not all the way down to the C3b. So probably not the correct answer. And then answer choice D is initiating the adaptive immune response. The adaptive immune response is outside the scope of this sketch, but that's more like cell-mediated B and T cells. So that's likely not the correct answer. And then answer choice E is stimulating cytokine production, which is more C5a and C3a, not C3b. So collectively, I think B is the right answer. And let's see what that memory hook was to help us get there. Awesome.
Yeah, so there's our 3-seeing crow, our C3 crow with the B glasses for C3b. And it's back there sort of in the evidence locker tagging area for optimization. And until you took step 1 a while ago, if you think the answer is only cost a nickel.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so we have 2 more to do. I'll try. I hope I'm not being too wordy. But question 2, a patient presents with recurrent bacterial infections despite normal levels of antibodies and leukocytes in their blood workup. Further testing reveals a deficiency in C5 convertase activity within his complement system. Which of the following processes is most likely impaired as a result? Okay, so thinking back, C5 convertase, given what we just learned in the sketch, C5 convertase cleaves C5 into C5a and C5b. C5a is closely correlated with C3a, which deals with inflammation. And then C5b is imperative to the MAP complex, as Chrissy mentioned. So when we read our answer options, we have A, chemotaxis of macrophages. Probably not. We have answer choice B, which is formation of the membrane attack complex, which we just mentioned, that C5b is very much needed to form that attack complex. So that is potentially an answer. We have answer choice C, which is opsonization of bacteria, which, if you paid attention to the last question, sounds more of a C3b kind of territory. And then production of interferon gamma. Sometimes using the sketch I find super helpful is that if it wasn't mentioned on the sketch, it's probably not the right answer. So thinking back to the sketch, nowhere in my brain is there a symbol for interferon gamma or even really any significant markers of inflammation. So D probably isn't the right answer. And then answer choice E, release of histamine from mast cells. Again, this is more inflammatory, C3A, maybe C5A, but not the most correct answer. So I'm going to say answer choice B, formation of the membrane attack complex, which what is the memory hook for that? Yay! Awesome. So we had this three-eyed bee crow with the cool hat, and then the Mac sign. Awesome. Okay, so last question. Question 3, a 40-year-old woman presents to the clinic with a history of recurrent bacterial infections. Laboratory studies reveal a deficiency in C5a within her complement system. Which of the following processes is most likely impaired as a result? So C5a, given everything we learned, so let's quickly read through our answer options. Option A is activation of macrophages. Potentially, but that usually includes C3A as well. So maybe not the most correct answer. Answer choice B is formation of the membrane attack complex. Again, we just did the last question. That was C5A, C5B. So that's an easy one to mark off. Answer choice C, neutrophil chemotaxis or macrophage chemotaxis is certainly possible, given that C5a is kind of imperative to the recruitment of macrophages. Answer choice D, thinking back to that crow with the 3B glasses, that's more 3B territory. And then we have E, which is the production of the interferon gamma, which again, if the sketch or didn't mention it, it's already kind of lower. And so the correct answer here is macrophage chemotaxis. Yep, with the cage and the 5A.
Oh,
Nice. Yeah, I think
okay.
just one thing that I think is super helpful is a technique that you kind of just alluded to, Anna, which is if it wasn't in the sketch, it's probably not right. And I think one of, again, a nice feature here is because these lessons are sort of separate and we talk about complement and interferons and mast cells and whatever else the sort of distractor answers were in the same large medieval world, but we keep the scenes pretty distinct. So, when you meet our interfering ferrets in other sketches talk about interferons, you're not going to get that mixed up with the complement stuff happening down here in Mac's sort of crypt/office.
I
So
think,
yeah, if it wasn't in the sketch, it's probably not the answer.
yeah, I think that was, and I love the sketchy way of like keeping it in the world, because I would watch sketches and be like, oh, this disease was in this world. And then when I'm reading answer choices, I'm like, I don't really remember what that disease is, but I know it is in no way related to, the complement cascade, or it's not a complement disease because it's like in a completely different universe. So sometimes it's just all it's all the negative space. I almost want to say that
Yeah.
sketch can also be super helpful.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, so we have some extra time, right, Jen, for Q&A?
Yes.
Yeah, we've answered a bunch of questions in the Q&A feature and in the chat already, but definitely have time to take some more. And if you want to put them in the chat, or I honestly don't even know how the Zoom Q&A thing works, but if you got a question over there, I could answer it, whatever.
Yeah, we can answer them live since we have the time now. So if anyone want to drop them in. I did get a lot or see a lot of questions about having sketchy lessons as PDFs for free. So fortunately, that's not available from Sketchy. It is, all the sketches are available in our paid subscription, which you're able to get access to with our very biggest discount now, which ends actually tomorrow with 25% off. Or if you're new to Sketchy, it is free for you to try for a week. So definitely take advantage of that and utilize that. Also, one other thing, if you want printed lessons of our sketches, our workbooks are available for purchase. I'll drop the link in the chat, but that is also another avenue to get the sketches all in one place.
We got a couple of questions in the Q&A thing here. Would we consider making a full-on dermatology section? Heck yeah, we would. Right now we approach derm topics more in the context of IM or peds, just because that's sort of how most people will encounter them on their main rotations. I will say that we are working on some cool new derm stuff for later this year. I think derm is one of those cases where a sketch is cool and can help you sort of memorize stuff, but man, there's really nothing like seeing the rash. So we're working on stuff in that direction. What else do we got here? I'm subscribed to Sketchy, but it seems like a lot of the lessons are locked off. It's not because they're not done yet. We don't really put up, we don't tease you with lessons that you can't see right now. So sounds like maybe there's some issue with your subscription. Yeah, Jen, I don't know if there's a good email for that person to get in touch with.
Yeah, definitely reach out. I see you asked via anonymous, so please reach out to support@sketchy.com and we're happy to take a look at your account.
How do you recommend that we use Sketchy most effectively for step 2 dedicated? There were a couple questions like this for step 1 and step 2. Anna and Chrissy, I'm actually curious to hear sort of your thoughts on this too. But for me, I would say the best way, and if it's too late, I'm sorry, but the best way to do this is to use them while you're in it for the first time. So if you're taking micro or you're in your cardiology block as a first or second year, or when you're doing your medicine rotation or your peds rotation, use Sketchy then. It'll help you sort of solidify the material in your mind, helps crystallize a little bit what is and isn't important. And it's just so dang sticky so that when you go back and you're on step 1 dedicated or step 2 dedicated, a lot of those pictures will be there already. And so you don't have to sort of relearn them. You'll probably need to brush up on them, I'll be honest. But that's what our review card tool is for. So you can quickly sort of tap through the picture rather than watching the video again. And if you learned it the first time sort of in context, I think that's a really powerful way to do it. But yeah, curious what y'all think since you've done this too.
Yeah,
definitely.
Go ahead, Chrissy. I can go
last. Yeah, I definitely agree. And if if the time has passed, if that clerkship is gone, I would just recommend going. We have our full clinical curricula is broken down by basically what like a clerkship would be. So I would do a clerkship at a time. And then another question here is what are the review tools on Sketchy? And what Ben was alluding to was what we call our symbol explorer, which, like you said, you can tap through the symbols instead of having to watch the whole video. So you can just kind of really reinforce, it'll show you as kind of zoomed in little picture of the symbol and then a full explanation of what that symbol represents and also kind of how it fits into the context of a lesson. So there's that review tool. There are the question banks. That's a review tool. And those are also, some of the questions are linked to the sketches themselves so that if you look in the answer choices, you can see they're like hyperlinked to the symbol that and concept that is being referred to. So all of that is kind of meant to reinforce the sketches. And I think, yeah, I would just use the product with those other features, use all the features of the product when doing step 1 or step 2 dedicated. And for step 2 dedicated, we are also really working on our clinical product. And so that is also just going to become more and more robust as time goes on.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on what Chrissy's saying, from a tutor's perspective, so I do not work for Blueprint, or sorry, I do not work for Sketchy. I work for Blueprint, but I recommend Sketchy products all the time, especially students that might be struggling during dedicated. Not only because of what Ben said, they're super sticky. They're great at truly memorizing and being able to recall information, but also I think the structure and how fast the videos are like unmatched. So sometimes I'll be like, listen, you are really struggling on all the vasculitities. Go watch the Sketchy videos twice. First time regular speed, second time time and a half. And at the end of the day, that student is already remarkably better and has a better understanding just because of how not only the image, but how it's structured, how quick it is. So I think overall it's super, from a tutor's perspective, it's super student dependent. Some students like really enjoy the imagery part of it. Others actually benefit more from just how it's structured and how well it's laid out.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, Anna. We've had people that narrate our videos, and actually Chrissy and I have both narrated videos before, and students won't know that it was our voices because they're used to hearing us at like 1.25 or 1.5 speed where we sound like. So yeah, pro tip, if you didn't know this already, the videos still work if you watch them faster. Yeah, somebody asked about how we select narrators. I think we look for people who can say medical words properly without too much coaching, and have a good cadence and will make it feel. The goal is for these videos to feel like what they are, which is that they're made for students by people who have lived that experience. So sort of a weird niche, but that's what we go for. For someone asked a logistical question, if I'm taking step 1 in March, good luck. Can I pay for a 1-year plan and get both step 1 content till March and then transfer it to clerkship stuff? So there's only one Sketchy subscription. You don't have to sort of transfer it or switch over or anything. When you buy Sketchy, you get all the content. Is there a timeline on when we might see OMM available? I don't want to put a specific date on it because it's coming in tandem with some other cool stuff, but later this year, let's say.
It's happening.
If you're quite curious about the OMM stuff, feel free to email me, ben@sketchy.com, and I can set you up to watch a sample OMM lesson. June Young asked about IMG post-resident reviewing USMLE stuff for the first time. Would you start Sketchy first or other detailed video lectures like Words and Beyond? I mean, Sketchy, right? Sketchy. You should do Sketchy. If you do Sketchy, my son gets to eat. No, I mean, I think, especially if you're, you know all this stuff somewhere in there. And so I think Sketchy is a great way for you to sort of unearth it and remind yourself that you really do, and then help it stick and help you focus on what's important for the USMLE, which might be slightly different than other licensing agreements. Question for you, Anna. Does Blueprint offer step 1 questions? I only see step 2 and shelf topics for purchase.
I believe right now just step 2, and then the big focus has been on the step 1 practice exam. So not currently.
Let's see.
And then I think Marissa, you mentioned that's a good point. So to best utilize Blueprint, watching Sketchy would help to further help the tutoring experience. I think to answer this question, it's totally student dependent. if that's your jam. If Sketchy works for you, then I would go full force with that. Blueprint's great though, because it's totally customized to what works for the student. So if I have a student that loves Sketchy, gosh, we will have entire like tutor sessions incorporating the Sketchy videos as we do like UWorld questions together and things of that nature. So again, it's completely variable on like for what that student finds works for them.
Pedro asked about, will the free 2-hour tutoring session details be sent to our emails at the risk of disappointing almost all of you? Not everybody is getting a free 2-hour tutoring session, sadly, though that sounds great. I think that's just one lucky winner.
Yes. Should we do that now? Jen, is now a good time to pick a winner?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. But last shout out though for our sale, 25% off. This is our biggest sale that we've ever run site-wide. So if you're interested in getting all of our sketchy lessons, including immuno and clinical, all preclinical, definitely take advantage of it today or by tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's when our sale will end. Cool. All right. I can definitely do the raffle for the one lucky winner. So what I have here, I'll share my screen just to make sure that it's so I have a random generator here, and I have a CSV on the side with all 298 attendees from the poll, and I'll just generate a number. So our 202nd poll respondent, and also if they are not here, then I will select another person. Want to make sure we give this to someone who made it all the way till the end. So our 202nd is Anuj Kavi. Give us a hello if you are here in the chat, and I have your email and I'll email you. Did anyone say anything?
I don't. Oh.
No, that's not your name. Anuj. Maybe he's not here.
Oh, there.
He made it. He made it. All right. Congratulations, Anuj. We will get you the free Sketchy and Blueprint tutoring session. Thank you for joining us till the end. Was there a question of 25% off?
Yeah. How to claim it?
Yeah. So just sketchy.com. Just head on there. All new accounts will have the 25% discount locked in. And also goes the same for if you're existing, have an expired subscription and you want to renew, you will also be able to claim the 25% off. Just make sure you do it before tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific.
And then I think there was one last question. I'm sorry. It was a question about requesting a specific tutor through Blueprint. You absolutely can. When you start the onboarding kind of process, you can request specific people.
And then there are a few more questions in the Q&A. Is there a way for med students to one-day tutor for Sketchy? I don't know if you mean tutor like Blueprint tutors, or if you mean work for Sketchy. Definitely. We're always, looking for cool people in the medical field. And Dr. Peggy, could you do just one subject like biochem? We do have a biochem section in our product. And so we do have that course available. It's not available as like an individual course that would like break out. It's just part of the product. And I think other people were asking kind of just if, as a med student, if you wanted to get involved in Sketchy. Ben, do you know, I know that sometimes we are looking for people to help us review like beta products and things like that. Should they just email one of us to kind of be kept on the short
Yeah,
list?
yeah, email us. We're friendly people. Ben at
Yes, you're
sketchy.com.
people. Yeah.
I've already gotten one email from this webinar, so seriously, feel free.
Yeah. And feel free to copy me or email me to Chrissy@sketchy.com. I've not gotten any emails. Somebody email me. Oh yeah, we can drop our emails.
Oh yeah, sure. Heck yeah.
Hey, well, I hope everybody has a good evening.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming out. This was awesome. We should do this again sometime.
Yes, stay until the end for the short survey. If you have any suggestions of other sessions, make sure you drop them in. We read them. We read through all of them. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.